All right, hello there, world history students. Let's keep learning about imperialism in Africa. Today I'm going to deep dive into the Belgian Congo. This was a really messed up part of world history, and it's all I would even consider making the argument that this event in history could be even worse than the slavery systems that happened in the 1500s. So, John Boyd Dunlop in 1887, he invented the inflatable rubber wheel, and also other people invented electrical cables and new types of shoes. All of these things dramatically increased the global demand for rubber. Today, we can make rubber from oil, but back then they didn't have that knowledge or that technology, and the only way you could get rubber were from rubber trees. And I already showed you in the last video how you could get rubber from rubber trees. You just kind of gotta cut little grooves around a tree and it accumulates. And so Europeans decided that they were going to make Africans get all the rubber that the world needed during this period. So it's sort of like when Europeans came back in Africa during this age of imperialism, in a way they reinstituted slavery, but this is now slavery on a continental scale, and it's really messed up. So let's check it out. Come on, click the button. There it is. So here's some Europeans ordering Africans to harvest more rubber and accumulate it in these rubber buckets. Here's the force publique. This is some, you see these white officers, but they've got all these African soldiers working underneath them. Here's another picture of the force publique. White dude, black soldiers. And here's what the rubber was used for. It was used for those bicycles. And here's some guys tapping rubber trees, carving it out so it accumulates in these buckets. Okay, so King Leopold II of Belgium, he was the leader of the country of Belgium. He never went to Africa in his entire life, but he was there at the Berlin Conference, and he was given personal ownership of the Congo. And the Congo is this big central part of Africa. He sent his agents to the Congo and said, I want you to make every person there harvest rubber. If people do not harvest rubber, I want you to cut off the hand of a child. And yeah, it was really messed up. And so his force publique, these were his private army, and they terrorized the people of the Congo for the next 40 years. And the force publique were white officers, and they employed African soldiers from other African cultures. And I mean, the parts of Africa have very different religions, very different languages. There's very different ethnic groups. So when Leopold would take Algerian Africans and send them to the Congo, they didn't feel any connection to the people of the Congo. So they were more willing to do some of these atrocious things. But yeah, so this is what happened. The force publique did some pretty vile things there in the Congo for 40 years. Okay, let's check it out. So there's King Leopold II. There's the force publique leading their army through the Congo. And here's a picture of them doing some of these terrible things to the people there. Here's some actual pictures of kids who got their hands cut off. And they are whipping people. And yep, pretty vile stuff that happened in the Congo. Oh, goodness. Okay, and the thing that I really want to try to show off to the class, though, is the whole time this was going on, King Leopold was just an expert at controlling the news media. During his entire life, the world had this vibe that Leopold was doing a good thing in Africa. Newspapers said stuff like this: the gratitude of the Congolese people to Leopold II for having liberated them from slavery. What? This guy reinstituted slavery. More Congolese able to read French than ever before. More Congolese so grateful for the guidance of Belgium on their way to modernity. And okay, yeah, Leopold probably did make a couple of these schools so he could get some good pictures for the newspapers. But there was this secret war going on in the jungles of the Congo, and the people of the world just didn't know about it. There was just no global representation for Africans at this time. And here's a statue of King Leopold still in Belgium today. And here's some of those schools that he made, but this was not the norm. These were maybe a few of them in the whole country. And during King Leopold's Congo Free State, It was an economic, environmental, cultural, and human disaster for the Congolese people. 10 million people died, 20% of the population. If we go back to the time of slavery, slavery was over a 300-year period, and 15 million Africans were enslaved. So this guy killed 10 million in only 40 years. It's unbelievable. And he did it through violence, forced labor, starvation, because when he told these people, like, you have to harvest this much rubber for me or my guys are going to cut off a child's hand, people then are spending all their time harvesting rubber and they don't have any time left to grow their own food. Belgium made millions of dollars from the devastation of the Congolese, and the Congo is still one of the most fractured places in the world today, and they can hold their history all the way back to this time period, where they were just terribly oppressed by the country of Belgium. Okay, so here's Leopold counting his coins, thinking about where they came from, and here's some people being abused. It's kind of messed up, and here's kids with their missing hands. Okay, and this is something that I just want to emphasize to the class. Hitler killed 6 million Jews and is remembered as one of the worst people in history. But King Leopold killed 10 million Africans and maimed millions more, yet he's not given anywhere near the same historical villainy. And I really wish I had a better understanding of why that is. So I think it's very important that students be aware that there were some other really, really messed up people who lived about 100 years ago. So let's check it out. Here's some more of the evil things that were happening in Belgium, or in the Congo, run by Belgium, and more children missing hands, and then the rubber coils, a snake just taking over an African guy with King Leopold's face on the front of it. So yeah, one murdered 10 million Europeans, the other murdered 15 million Africans. So who's worse, you know? Okay, and then here's just kind of the sad truth about this chapter of history. Leopold, he lived a long, full life. Okay, he died peacefully in his bed from natural causes. He was never really brought to justice. Near the end of his life, people sort of began to finally figure out what was happening in the Congo. And people were talking about maybe putting him on trial, but he had so much wealth and so much power, it never happened. It's estimated he got $2.5 billion in profit from the Congo, and that's back in 1910 dollars. I mean, in today's money, it's undoubtedly in the trillions. And the 30 years in which he controlled the Congo, the people of Belgium generally loved him. They called him the Builder King. No one really investigated where he had all that money in the first place. And it's definitely a really dark mark on human history. Another weird fact is he died when he was 65 and he was having relations with a 16-year-old French girl. Whoa. Yeah, so he's not a very upstanding moral dude either. Okay, so here's King Leopold, who was on Belgium's money ever since they before they converted to the euro. So he was a well-respected, well-loved guy in their culture. Here's a picture of him with his 16-year-old. And then these are some of the things that he made for Belgium, and they're still in Belgium today. Statues of the dude. And then here's his palace, his face on coins. He's remembered by the Belgians to be kind of a heroic dude. But because he built up Belgium so much, but he built it off the backs of slave labor. It's pretty messed up. Pretty messed up stuff. Okay. And then I'll just end today's lesson with this. So there's this concept called King Leopold's ghost. And it's sort of this ghost that kind of just haunts the Congo to this day. It's people saying that, Congo has kind of never recovered after this terrible 40 years that happened 100 years ago. So here's a little poem that I think would have been appropriate to say at King Leopold's funeral. Listen to the yell of Leopold's ghost, burning in hell for his hand-maimed host. Hear how the demons chuckle and yell, cutting his hands off down in hell. And that's my favorite quote from Adam Hochschild's book about King Leopold. All right. So, let me just read this too. So, from the colonial era to the major legacy of Europe left for Africa, it was not democracy as is practiced today. It was authoritarian rule and plunder. On the whole continent, perhaps no nation has a harder time than the Congo in emerging from the shadow of the past. Messed up stuff. Okay, I'll talk about this in the final video. Peace out.